Welcome to you, beautiful, to your infinite potential, to greater consciousness, to a life that's truly limitless. You're listening to Creating Beyond podcast with your host, Ashlee Rose, and I'm here to guide you home to you. Throughout this podcast, I will introduce you to the tools I've personally used and you can use to create beyond your mind and actualize the life you've always dreamed of. What do you desire to create as your life? And is now the time to step into everything you came here to be. Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Creating Beyond podcast. And this week I have a really special guest, someone that I have watched over the last few years since starting my journey of access consciousness. And I realized we'd never actually had a conversation. So Amy Shine, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Oh, thank you for inviting me on.
And you are a fellow Access Consciousness certified facilitator and teach the Talk to the Entity classes and the 3D body classes. So I just a few days ago, you pinged and I was thinking about my podcast and who else I can have on. And I messaged you and you messaged me back basically straight away and said, why don't we have a conversation about turning pain into pleasure? And I so love that because I mean, there's not one person that's probably listening to this or like in the world that hasn't experienced some kind of pain in their life or still experiencing that kind of pain in their life. And I really am excited to see where we can go with this conversation. So, you were talking a little bit before we started recording this episode, but can you just give people a little bit of a background kind of information about your journey of turning the pain that you're experiencing into pleasure?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's such a long journey and it comes like in waves, right? But when you first asked me that, the first memory I got was me in a nightclub in Ibiza, and I was 21. And so, I would say like the one of like the biggest pains or losses in my life, which was like an epic turning point that changed the future of me and my family, was when my brother died and I was 16 and he was only 21. And so it was like a big tragedy. We came from a small town in Cork, Ireland. Everybody knew us, it was like a whole like tragic event for the town because it wasn't just my brother, it was also his best friend. So two of them died and they were neighbors and they were really good friends. So there was this whole big tragic loss within the town and then within our family. And then for me it was also like the pain of everything else that went along with that, like because it's like when something like that happens, like when a loss happens, whether it's someone who physically dies or someone like a relationship ending, or it's a change and it changes everything, like it changes the dynamics of everything. And there's more than just losing the person, there's like losing who you were, what your relationship was to them, what your relationship was to the other people around you, like who you were when you were with them. There's so much to like process within that. And I was young, I didn't know how to process anything. And but one of the things that I remember was when I started to go to Ibiza and for this summer, and we were going to these nightclubs and the DJ was playing like trance music. And I had gone to raves and things like that before, but this was where I really started to dance. Like I really started to really get into the dance and the music and the movement. And I remember really feeling like I was like, it was therapy. Like I could feel it in my soul, like this is helping me, And it's funny, like my brother that had died, he was really into trance music. So it made me feel like really close to him. And in a way, I really felt him present. So in the music, I started to lose myself in the movement. And by the way, this was like before I even took drugs. I was like sober, like drank before we went out. But by the time you get to the club and you start dancing, you're sober because you can't afford to drink in the nightclubs. It's so expensive there. But I was sober dancing, but it was therapy. And I remember feeling him very present with me. And at that time, I didn't know anything about talking to entities in the spirit world, but I felt this like he was with me, and it became like this healing for me. And then as the summer progressed, I started to do drugs and I started to do more. And I still had a lot of pain and a lot of loss and a lot of stuff that I didn't know how to process. But when I moved my body, something shifted. Like, and I knew there was something in there for me. And so that was like, I think the first glimpse of, oh, like I can turn this like pain and loss into something that's actually quite magical. Like like the movement for me, and the dance and the music, and especially the trance music, because it's very mystical and magical, the trance music. Like there's like different female voices and tones coming through. It's very heaven like. And it transported me to where I would say was where he was. And I wanted more of that. I wanted to stay there. Like, and that's, I mean, I think that's why we
Mm.
get in, sometimes go down the road of drugs then, because we're like, sometimes drugs opens that up in us and we're like, oh my God, I want to stay there. And but I started to get glimpses of, oh, okay, like I don't actually have to be in pain all the time. Now, sad thing for me at that time was when I stopped dancing and the music stopped, I was in pain. I was in loss. I was
Mm.
in grief because I had no other tools.
Mm. Wow. And like, thank you for your vulnerability having this conversation as well, because it's like how many of us have gone down that road of like, drugs or alcohol, like any form of addiction that literally at the time we may not realize like the pain it's actually creating in our world and what else is possible beyond that. But I mean, even though like I haven't had much grief in my life and I haven't had much loss and I haven't had, well, I haven't been addicted to drugs or alcohol, but I've been addicted to food. And there was such massive pain in my life in regards to anxiety and depression. And I honestly wasn't even sure that there was anything else possible beyond that, like any pleasure available beyond that. And I love what you said about this whole idea about like pain, because how much of pain is just like where we're not even sure who we are, like where we're actually seeking and searching for ourselves. And that seems to kind of, for me, like start this whole kind of pathway to pain, when it can be painful when you're looking for your purpose or you're trying to find who you are or you're trying to find yourself. And I know how many of us have grown up going, why am I here? Like, what's my purpose? Um, so with anyone listening that's like experiencing like any form of pain right now, whether that's like judgment of you, whether that's like addiction, anxiety, depression, grief, loss, like what are some tools, or what would you actually like mention to them to start with, to start kind of experiencing that pain, that pleasure, I should
Yeah.
say.
I just want to say, like, I think that's like a myth that like you need to like, like someone needs to die close to you for you to know what really grief is. People say that all the time, like, unless you know someone who's really close to you and died, you don't know what grief is. And I actually don't think that's true. Um, Likewise, I don't think you need to have children to know what it's like to have children, because I have memories of lifetimes of with children. I know that.
Mm,
So there's all sorts of things that people throw around that I would challenge. So just what you said there, before my brother even died, I always felt lost. I was always lost soul. I always felt like very like lost here, on this planet, and like searching for, what am I doing here? What's my purpose? Like, I don't fit in. I feel everything feels off. This does not feel like my home. And kind of like, where is my home? So there was
mm,
always that searching, like to belong, because you felt like you didn't belong. And that in itself is painful. And that is in itself grief. A lot of us come into this world, I think, grieving our home because this doesn't feel like home to us. The people maybe and how this world functions isn't home. I would say, since I found access consciousness, the earth starts to feel more like my home, but the people don't. And one of the things, like you said, like how do you even begin to cope with that? Like what I see is that like we have all this like unexpressed, you can call it emotions, or we talk more, me, you Ashley, Rose, talk more about energies. But like in a way, energy is just like emotions. Like they're just kind of like, if you aren't allowed fully express yourself, then that gets stuck in your body. And so that can lead to anger, depression, you know addiction, starving your body, overeating, undereating, abusive sex, like abusive relationships, because it's like you have all this like stuck energy, stuck emotions that haven't really been processed. So this morning, I'm reading this book called Pussy, a Reclamation with Mama Gina. And one of the things she talked about, which I love, because she talked about how when you have a toddler, and you ever throw like see a toddler, like, I don't know, if you take something from them, they'll throw a tantrum and it's like their whole world has ended. Like they're devastated. And then they'll throw their tantrum and then they'll get up and they'll go back playing. They got to express that emotion fully and then they got to move on. I would say, in energy, they got to move that energy. They got to have that energy, move it, shift it, and then move on to the next energy, which was joy. They got to transmute that pain and devastation into joy, and none of it got to be significant because they got the chance to do that. So I had a memory today of the priest coming up to me during my brother's removal when I first saw him in the casket and asked me to like pull it in, like to like get it together because I was actually wailing. Well, I'm reading another book called, and I can never remember the name, but it's Mikhail is his name, and it's anyway, it's a shaman's perspective about processing grief. And this is, again, it doesn't just have to be about someone dying. It could be losing a job. It could be ending a relationship. It could be a war. It's like when we don't process grief, it gets stuck in the body. And then what happens is we pass it on to the next generation and the next generation. So it's like we're all going around just like depressed and suppressed in our bodies because we've never really get to process these energies and move them through our bodies. So you asked me what tool would I use? I would say like whatever you can find that can help you move and process the emotions or the energy, whatever you want to call it. To me,
Mm.
I don't know if there's much difference. Like I don't want to sit and process my feelings through talking. Like that doesn't help me. For me, I got to move the energy. Getting my bars run moves energy in my body. Getting body processes moves energy in my body. Ecstatic dance, five rhythms, breath work, acupuncture, like being with the earth, moving, dancing, swimming in the ocean moves energy in my bodies. Sometimes crying, sometimes wailing, sometimes laughing, sometimes like having an orgasm. Like, what if it's none of it had to be significant? Like, what if it was okay to like express ourselves and like
Mm.
move the
Mm.
energy, Like we see Dane
Yeah.
and Gary, like they're with their hands, and they move their hands, and people are always like, what are they doing? They're like, they're just moving energy. You could go to someone else
Yeah.
who's a sound healer and use sound to move energy.
Mm.
So I would say find whatever it is for you that resonates with you that would move that. So you don't have to be
Mm.
stuck suppressed in your body.
I love that, and it's so interesting because the last few days I've started like I facilitate the Right Voice for You classes, which is really about empowering people to like find their voice. And our voice is also not our physical voice. Like a lot of people believe like, okay, you come to these classes to learn how to sing, but your voice is basically your expression in the world, like what you be that invites people to a different possibility. And the thing is, if like particularly with like this suppression of energy or this unwillingness to express yourself, we have so much suppressed joy as well. Like we suppress all of these different energies, but particularly we suppress joy. And I started looking at the last few days of what I did when I was younger. And I remember when I was, well, not a lot of the time, but there was these periods in my life that there was just so much joy and pleasure. And that the only time that I experienced that was when I was dancing. And I danced competitively from the age of 8 to 14. And I did a lot of EastEdfords. I spent my entire life dancing or singing really badly, but I just remember how much fun I had. And I started looking at that the last few days, and I was like, how much of that is my expression, like my voice that I actually like was having in the world? And where did that stop? And I really remember like moving from Melbourne in Australia to Noosa, where I live now, and really starting to worry about what people think of me. And it was in that moment of not being willing to receive people's judgments. Was I a good enough dancer? Like, was I good enough to compete at the level everybody else was? That I started totally like suppressing my voice, my joy, which leads to, really for me, like I get, leads to so much of the pain that so many people are trying to actually like escape from.
Yeah, I love that. Like, as I facilitate these classes like with Access Consciousness. It's called Accessing the Joy of Body, where people come and we really get out of our heads into our body and move, but not in a competitive way, not at all in a structured way. And I was talking to someone in class, and I'm like, take all the drama in your life and dance it out, move it out. Like, let the drama be on the dance floor. Like, give it a space and a voice on the dance floor. Like, and that's why I love movement, because it's like, okay, I can be fiery, I can be power, I can be anger, I can be frustration, I can be sensualness, I can be sexual, I can be light, I can be fairy, I can be whatever in the movement. And if I can like express that in the movement, I don't have to go into my life then and create all this drama. I can actually, and like you said, give it a voice. Like, giving it a voice may be through movement, or maybe through artwork for you, or maybe through singing, but like letting that through somewhere, giving it a channel. But if we don't channel this, we don't transmute it. Because I wondered too, like, how much, when you were dancing, how much you were taking maybe the things that were going on in your life, not fitting in, not feeling like you were belonging, judging your body, like whatever stuff, being around other girls, trying to be friends with people, all that weird shit you have growing up, taking that and then being able to like channel it through your dance. I used to run, I was a runner. And like, I wonder how much I used to move energy when I ran. And it gives it a place, because the thing is, grief, when it's transformed and transmuted, turns to joy. And there is a lot of joy underneath grief. So it's like, you don't actually have to stay in pain, all like, you can, and a lot of people do, but you're not supposed to be in pain all the time. You are supposed to access joy, you are supposed to access ecstasy, like it is your birthright. But like a baby, when they come into the world, like they will scream and cry when something's not working for them, or they want to be fed or whatever, or they're teething, they will cry, they have pain, but then they scream it out, and then they have joy again. They don't get stuck in the pain. And the problem comes when we get stuck in the pain, and then we don't have a channel for the joy.
Mm.
And so where are we
Yeah.
accessing joy?
Yeah, exactly. And like, where have you decided or bought that like pain is your only choice? And there's something like strange that occurs like from being a child to like growing up, where so many of us believe that we don't actually have a choice. And that, I think particularly for me, I bought that I was that pain. I bought that I was that grief. I bought that I was that energy of loss and, not fitting and not belonging. And I think it's, as soon as we buy this as like real and true and ours, then this is what actually stops us from actually really accessing that, the joy that's underneath all of this. And really, for like any of you listening, like, if you take any pain that you're experiencing right now, whether that's the pain of like not even fitting in, like, I mean, that is a pain. How much joy have you had to suppress to actually hold that pain in place? And as Amy was saying, which I love, it doesn't matter how you express it, but like, if you were willing to start looking at like, and go back to when you were younger and when you experienced a lot of pleasure and a lot of joy in your life, and ask yourself and get the energy, like, what were you choosing? And this is where all of this awareness has come up for me the last few days of, oh, wow, I actually used to dance. For what reason did I actually stop? And so for any of you listening, like, even if it was only moments that you remember when you were younger of like experiencing this total joy, like, start looking at like what you were choosing and what did you know back then? And what if you're willing to actually choose that again now? And but just for the fun of it, not to compete like, I was doing, but really I've just started like looking at all these dance schools around where I live now, and I'm like, I'm just going to start dancing again. Like, for what reason would I not?
Yeah, and I think if you can find something, like find it, a space where you can whatever you choose, like that, you can do it from the space of like wild abandon, like primal letting go. Like it doesn't matter what you look like. This isn't like, you're not trying, like you said, you're not trying to be like a performance dancer. Like, you know, you can actually let go of the right, wrong, the judgment. That for me, like the ecstatic dance and that form of movement is great, because I get to really just be wild, primal, out of control, raw, uncut, and whatever comes out comes out. It's messy, it's whatever. It can be pretty sometimes, it cannot be pretty, it can be wild, complete abandon. Because that's that place of like, you really access that inner child again, because you talked about it, like what was it when you were younger, you didn't care. Like in that moment you were like, oh, I can just really let go here. Because I just saw this, you were like, where did you have that joy? And I just saw this memory of me, like a 3-year old just playing by herself. Like I didn't need anyone else. I had an incredible joyful world just with me. I wasn't worried about what someone was thinking about me, or how I looked, or how I needed to appear. And if you could find somewhere that you could access that again, and I have to say, like getting access bars, getting your bars around really helps you in letting go of caring about what other people think about you. That really helps. Um, movement is another way for me. Maybe even singing, right? Like I've had to start opening up to using my voice, because I was told, you know, when I was younger that I couldn't sing. That's still imprinted back there. So I still have to work, and I don't, it's not even about whether I can sing or not, but actually using my voice for me is incredibly powerful. So even just like opening up to like, okay, let me use my voice here, or let me move, and it could be just like in your kitchen putting a song on where there's no one around. That's where I began. I began this in my in my bedroom, with music and nobody else around me. And it was a way of like, let me just like fuck the world, fuck everyone else, and just let go here. So um where else, I wonder where else, like, because I know we tend to movement is incredibly powerful, but I wonder what other mediums are also a great way of like letting go without the, do you know what, maybe like spending time with kids and like cooking with them, or like doing something messy, you know, like
Mm,
getting messy,
mm.
like gardening or something.
Yeah, well, that's what I was just actually, as you were talking, like getting the download of. I was like, what is it? Because yes, there's movement and yes, there's all these other things, but I was like, what's actually underneath that? And the awareness I just got was that it's in those moments that we allow ourselves to be us, be everything we are, be unapologetically ourselves. And so when we allow ourselves to be, then we can receive. We have access to receiving of everything, receiving of that joy that we actually are, receiving of that ease that it is actually our natural state, like receiving of what's actually possible. And so, really, it's this access to being that for me, now I'm having this awareness, like, is what actually turns that pain to pleasure. Because in the moments that I've had the most pain, which would have been when I lived in Melbourne and I was binge eating, I was diagnosed with severe anxiety and depression, and there was so much pain and grief of just everything in my world. And what I didn't allow myself was to be, because there was so much judgment, so much wrongness of I shouldn't be anxious, I shouldn't be depressed. There must be something wrong with me if I have these quote unquote diseases. If I'm overeating and binge eating, well, that's wrong, that's bad. And so anytime you judge yourself, anytime you make yourself wrong, you're not actually being. You're judging, which is literally basically like fueling this pain, like fueling this grief, fueling this loss. So if all of you listening were really willing to begin to allow yourself to be more, then I wonder what access to receiving something different is actually available to you. And accessing more being can come from the space of relaxation. So, relaxation may be meditation. Relaxation may be swimming in the ocean. Relaxation may be singing. Like relaxation doesn't look like you laying down and closing your eyes. Like what is true relaxation for you?
Yeah. And like also, you know, when you talk about like the pain, like all addiction stems from a core judgment, the core judgment that there's something wrong with me. So you're talking about the pain again. And I think most of us listening can identify with that pain of there's something wrong with me. And then to cover up that wrongness, to cope with that wrongness, we'll look for food, alcohol, relationship, sex, all the secondary addictions. But ultimately, like, it's just pain is just unexpressed energy. That's all it is. Like, I was going to say unexpressed trauma, but even in that, that's a little bit significant. You know, trauma is so significant. It's like the buzzword these days. Everyone has trauma. We're all trauma healing. And we do. A lot of us have trauma. But if we didn't took away the heaviness of the word trauma and just went, okay, if this pain of whatever it is, whatever the judgment, I don't, of the wrongness, the pain of the wrongness of me is just energy unexpressed. It's just energy that hasn't been moved through. How could I move it? How could I express it? How could I transform and transmute this into something else? And I love that fact that you brought in the being, because first we got to be with it. And this is where the addictions come in, is because we don't want to be. We want to run from it. You know, we want to go to, you know, we want to do anything to avoid it. So we will run away from our pain, which that doesn't really help, and we'll avoid it rather than, okay, if I just be with it. Like I had, you know, sadness come up on Sunday, and I was like, I'm just going to be with this. I'm just going to sit with it. I'm going to be with it. And I wrote a letter, and then I cried, and then I was like, okay. And then I went to the ocean, and then I swam in the ocean. The thing about it is, if when pain is there, or wrongness or judgment, if you don't run from it, if you be with it and you allow yourself to express it whatever way you did, like on Sunday I wrote it out, I cried a bit, and then I went to the ocean, and then I gifted it to the ocean, and the ocean's like, thank you, because you don't need to hold on to this, because we can transmute this is just energy. And then the joy comes, and the peace comes, and the space comes. So pain isn't supposed to be held on to. It's not yours to hold on to. It's a collective like pain that we all have from being born on this planet. And if we can express whatever's there, be with it, then what's underneath that? That's what I'm really excited about. And I know that the joy that I've experienced and access in my life would not maybe have been possible had I not faced the pain that was there and
Mm.
been present with the pain that was there and then moved it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's like also like one of the 101 tools in access consciousness is asking like, who does this belong to? Like, who does this sadness belong to? Like, who does this wrongness belong to? So even that, by asking that question, also moves energy. Like, and you know, if you get who does this belong to, and you get it's not yours, you can just return it to sender. So that's also a way of like moving this energy. And really definitely that piece of being for me. I have a friend here at the moment, and we were driving to dinner last night, and well, we just had a photo shooting. And even that, like even in the photo shooting, I allowed myself to express parts of me that I didn't even recognize I don't usually allow myself to express. And in that, like, I was so much more like, there was even more space and particularly the joy in my world. And I started like playing music and singing in the car really loudly. I didn't even care that he was there. And that's not something I do very often. And that led into this so much joy that kind of exploded in my world. And then we drove to dinner, and he said, "You know what we're doing? We're going to create a music video." And I was like, "A music video?" And he was like, "Yes, you're going to sing to that song, and I'm literally going to create a music video just for fun." And so initially there was that part of my world that's like like there was like the embarrassment and like all of this stuff come up initially, and I just sat with it and I was like, what if none of that's relevant? Like, who actually gives a shit? Like, every judgment of us, every wrongness is a total invention anyway. Like, judgment's not real, yours or anybody else's of you. And so I just went for it, and he played the song 3 times to get all these different like shots of me. And by the end of it, I was like, holy shit, that was so much fun. I channeled, singers. And but just that, like, I even just that last night, I was like, wow, how much more could I be expressing myself, like having my voice in the world? And I even started, I actually said to him, like, I have a Right Voice for You class coming up. It's not even that fun to be promoting it and inviting people to it, because so much of promotion done in this reality is to prove. And then I was like, but that was so fun. You could just make the music video and I could just say, like, desire to have your voice. Like, join us for Right Voice for You. But it's like, it's interesting because where do we decide it has to look a certain way rather than if we're willing to like express ourselves and really like access more of that joy, then what?
I love that. And that is so key in like turning the pain into pleasure. Like how much more like joy of living do you have when you get creative, right? When you do what's uncomfortable but you've never done before. Like how fun it was to like just on the spot record these videos and then be like, oh, I could use them for this and I could play with this over here. And now this starts lighting up every other area in your life. And that's actually been one of the things I've been really present with too in recently coming out of a 7 year marriage and um separating is like putting my energy into very creative things that light me up. I actually
Mhm.
did some photo shoot recently as well, and just being out in nature and shooting photos, and I was like, oh my god, I just love this energy, because it's like it makes me come alive, this creative energy. And it's like if you look
Mm.
at the earth's always recycling. It's like there's death and birth constantly with the earth. There's like new seasons coming and going, and it's like, what if we could flow in that? Like, never, we don't have to stay stuck in any of these energies, but because also like you're not going to live in this constant state of creative joy like you were yesterday. And I think that's sometimes what happens to us is we're like, okay, I want this all the time. Like I was about the dancing at the club. I was like, I want to stay here, just here, and I want to avoid everything else that isn't like this magical lightness. But that's not the world we live in. You actually can't, because then what happens is that the joy will go away from those things. So like you could start looking at what else could you add, what else could you be creative with, but that doesn't mean there's going to be other energies, because it's like the cycles, right? There's ebbs and flows, like you see in your business. There's times where your business is doing great, there's times where there's a slowdown. And if we didn't resist like the pain, if we didn't resist the pain when it came, if we didn't resist the slowdown when it came, if we didn't resist the how much easier it would be then to shift into the joy and the magic and the creation and actually ride the wave rather than resisting the wave.
Yeah. And it's not wrong to have like these ebbs and flows either. I think like so often, particularly like so many conversations I have in business, it's like, what's wrong with me? Last week I had 200 clients. Well, that's a lot,
Yeah.
but just as an example, this week I have one. Like, what's wrong with me? And it's like nature does work in seasons. So does your business. So does your relationships. Like, so does like literally everything in your life, because we are more connected to the earth than like anyone really speaks about, has acknowledged before, like teaches us about. So I really love everything you said, because really it's like the joy as well. So often people misidentify joy as this ecstatic, like happiness, or you have to be smiling all the time or laughing. But like, what if joy is the peace of space
I
and the
love that.
space of peace?
Can you say
And
that again?
that's what if joy is the peace of space and the space of peace?
Mm.
And if that was your new definition of joy, you could have joy always. Because in every moment, even if there is some kind of pain that comes up, someone judges you, someone makes you wrong, you judge yourself, there can be space in that, like by your very choice. And really, I think like what I want to finish this conversation with is ease, joy, and glory, and really ease, joy, and lightness is your natural state of being. And I think so often we, like I said, we don't recognize that joy and ease and lightness is our natural state. That is us being us. Anything else is us being aware of someone else's reality, or buying into someone else's reality, or buying into the pain and the sadness of this reality. But really, like, my kind of go-to from turning pain into pleasure is, number one, acknowledging that, wait a second, I be joy. So right now it's just I'm not being me. Okay, cool. So how do I get back to me? And that is one of the quickest ways to access more of you, is through being, and like literally expressing whatever that looks like, the singing, the dancing, the cooking. Like, because when we talk about people having their voice, some people's voice is the gardening, the cooking, that it's this way of expressing themselves and being in the world. So, what is that for you? What is your voice that you've never been willing to claim and acknowledge before, that if you acknowledged it would allow you to access so much more of that joy and turn all of your pain into this epic pleasure of living?
I love that. Thank you so much for that.
Awesome.
I was like, there is peace and space in the grief. Like for me,
Mhm.
it's not like sad. It's like, whoa, hi. Oh, you're here? Okay, let's go in there. And then it's like, okay, you're gone again. Bye. Like again, like what if you were like the 3-year-old toddler? Like, you know, you could like scream like the whole world is ending and then be like, okay, I'm gonna go play now. You know, like
Mhm.
there is peace
Mhm.
in all of that. There's space in all of that. It's only our judgment of it that doesn't allow us to have peace and space with it. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for saying that. And it's interesting
Yep.
because if you talk to people sometimes they'll try to take you out of it, like it's something you shouldn't be in, like you shouldn't be in pain, you shouldn't be in grief, you shouldn't be in the, like, no, it's okay, I have peace with being here, I'm not going to stay here forever, it's going to shift, it could be shifting like 10 seconds from now, you know.
Mm.
uh, so
Mhm.
it's like if you don't buy anybody else's judgments or anyone else's reality and you don't make it significant like the 3-year-old, what else is possible? Like,
Exactly. And I get that that is this space that you can have in all things, whether your house is just burnt down, whether you have just left, a 7-year relationship. Like I recently, like left, well, my long term relationship, but we were on and off for 13 years. And again, it's only the judgments that we have, the wrongness that we make real and true, the points of view we have about where we should be at or what's right and what's wrong, that diminishes the space. But you can always access that space. It's only the judgments that keep us from accessing that space with no matter what's actually going on in your life. And really, for me, it's acknowledging that that space is me. Like as an infinite being, the molecular configuration of you is energy, space, and consciousness. So ultimately, you be that space. You be space, you be ease, you be joy, you be lightness. And if you never bought the lie that that wasn't your natural state of being again, like then what's possible? Then you can just allow energy to come and go and transmute and be you. And from that, go, what do I desire to create as my life? And that's the adventure of
a
being
photo
here as much as
shoot,
sometimes.
a video, singing in a video, being on
I might
MTV.
I
Like,
might quit being a facilitator and just become a singer, who knows? You wait until
yes,
I post it. Everyone's gonna be waiting for me to post my music
I
video.
want to hear it. I want to see it. I was like, I want to see your video, and now I want to come to Right Voice for You with you. Like, I want to make. Can we do videos in your Right Voice for You class? Like, I want to
Well,
do
we
that.
do. We do.
You do.
We do. And I just have to say before, like, anybody, like, actually watches my music video, like, according to this reality, like, and I've been told as well, like, I can't sing. So that's what makes it even more fun of like, am I willing to just like be everything I am and post it? But how much, like, do you notice the energy in the space of that? Like how much more freedom do you access? Like how much more joy do you access? How much more receiving do you then begin to access through that willingness to just go, I don't even give a shit because judgment's literally a total invention anyway. Like
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much because according to this reality, I can't sing either. So now you're inspiring me. I was like, would I go on video and sing? Like, it's it's giving me an invite to that in the world, and how many other people like us who were told they couldn't sing are now like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, that's possible, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I also think you're such a renegade that you're a right voice for you facilitator when to this reality you can't sing. So I love that too. That makes me even more want to do a class with you.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, like right voice view has nothing to do with singing. The way I facilitate it is allowing you to access your very being. Like, what is it you be in the world that literally invites the world to something different? And if you're willing to acknowledge that which you be and function from that space, beyond judgment, beyond wrongness, like, then what could you invite the world to? Then what could you invite yourself to? And it's really like having your voices everywhere we're not willing to include ourselves in the world. And if we were willing to include ourselves in the world and be everything we are and be as stupid as we are and do stupid music videos and like dance and,
Dance
then like
stupid.
what inspiration? Exactly. So I think we have to do a music video, Amy. Next time we like meet in person, like maybe we should
We'll do
record
music and
something.
dance
Yeah, exactly.
in
We'll
parallel.
choreograph.
I'm really bad at choreography. Really bad. I can't remember any steps. That's why I just free movement.
Well, this is going to be even more fun. So, thank you so much for being here with me and for this
Thank
conversation.
you.
I'm so grateful for you and everything you're choosing in the world. And would you let people know where they find you, what you have coming up?
Yeah, you can. I mean, my website is www.amyshine.net. And I have lots of events coming up live and in person. And I'm actually doing 365 days of out of control free on Facebook. It's a Facebook group. And we're on the second year of it. So you can also find me there every day for the next year running out of
Wow.
control clearings. Um, and and yeah, just check out www.amyshine.net for what I have coming up.
Awesome. That might be easier. And you do have a podcast called The Dance to Oneness.
Yes, which I would like you to
Yeah,
come on.
I can certainly come on that.
Yes.
And so I'll pop the links to all of that in the show notes below for any of you
Thank
that don't
you.
know Amy that want to check her out more. And I guess, seeing as we were talking about Right Voice View, I do have a Right Voice View class coming up in Noosa, March 31st to April 2nd. And there will be more around the world, in Europe or different places. I'm just not sure when or where yet. So you can just go to my website, ashley-rose.com/events to find those when they land. So thank you again, Amy. I adore you. And I'll see all of you guys for another episode of Creating Beyond podcast at some stage. Bye for now.
Bye.